Blended Podcasts. Brought to you by Blended Audio.
ArtPod is a South African-focused visual arts podcast hosted by Claude Chandler. Join me weekly every Saturday as I'm joined by a new guest who occupies a position within the visual arts community, ranging from fine arts, tattooing, framing, and logistics. Welcome to another episode of ArtPod. This is episode 19. Today I'm joined by Atang Tshikare. I think I've pronounced that right.
Yes, sir.
This is definitely a treat. I am a huge fanboy and I'm very excited to have you on the show. Thanks for coming on.
All right, thanks.
Designer, artist, I would like to even say CEO most likely, entrepreneur, and philanthropist, traveler.
Yes.
Could you just give the people listening just a kind of a little brief description about yourself or what you do or what you're currently doing?
As Atang, I am an artist. I think it's the easiest composition I can say with all the things that I do, because on the 14th of this month, I'll be a radio DJ. A disc jockey at a nightclub. I play mostly like African music. I collect vinyls.
Okay.
And then that comes from some of my dad's collection, who's also an artist, and he's an illustrator. So I have that in my blood as well. I do illustrations. I wanted to do cartooning, but I felt it's too close to what he does.
All right.
So I've actually done something for Zander Ferreira and Gazelle a couple of times.
Amazing. All right.
Yeah, not really cartoons, but like stuff like that. And then I do graffiti as well when I'm not in Cape Town.
Okay.
I don't want the trouble.
What is it, like, don't shit where you eat or something?
More like I've heard really hardcore rumors about what do you call it? Securities that shoot people.
Really?
Yeah.
To that extent?
Yeah, because they don't know if you're cable theft or you're vandalism, but basically you shouldn't be there. And if you're not there, if you're there by any means, it means that you're causing trouble and you're being told to scare you or shoot you, whatever it is. So I'm not about that life.
For sure.
And besides that, I surface design. That's, I think, what I'm also quite known for. I've got wallpaper ranges. I've done surface design on bicycles and skateboards with Ken from Alpha Longboards, and I recently did something for BMW, sometime earlier this year, and even for a gallery called THK. And yeah, I've done murals in different ways and surface designing on objects and on walls.
Yeah, my first introduction to you was actually through World Art, so from your artist background.
That about as
yes. And it was quite interesting. I think it was you were exhibiting with me at the Turbine Art Fair in 2015, I think. Yeah. And I remember I was so excited about the fair, and I went there in person. It was my first one, and we hanging the work. I'm helping Shell hang. And these two business guys walk past, like one with like a Bluetooth head, telephone headpiece. And then he looks at Sean and he's like, I hear you've got a tongue's work. And then they're like, and I was just like thinking, oh my God, what's going on here? How did these guys just know this? And then they did some Illuminati handshake and walk off.
I know who you're talking about, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think I do. Okay, but another story for another day.
So that was my first introduction. And then, of course, from that point, you kind of look into it, and then you basically a big part of the Cape Town creative landscape, I would say. You seem to have a finger in every pie, and and in terms of, and then on your website and a lot of interviews you've done, I know you like to kind of separate your design life from your art life, and as you said, Atang as the artist, and then your Zabalazaa Design is more of your collaborative project, where you like working with companies or corporates or brands and trying to make.
Geez, you've done some good research, man. You're exactly on the point. That is exactly the way it is, because I realized at some point that people want things for a more affordable price, and you can make things that are in numbers and be able to sell it to everyone. So at the end of the day, you know, as a South African, being able to sell to South Africans is one of my greatest pleasures, because I grew up buying a lot of South African products. You know, I had a business way back where I sold clothes, and with that I'd go and buy from Craig Native, I'd buy from whoever it was, and even with music as well, I used to buy from actual musicians or stores that sold South African music only, you know. So I had to create something which is Zabalazaa, and that's why even when Mr. Price Home came to me, they gave me a certain price point and they said, this is what we want to sell the stuff for, and I was like, oh, immediately it's retail, and if it's retail then I have to sell it under Zabalazaa, because I don't make a massive story about that type of artwork, because there's such a widespread audience that you're doing something for. You can't really target a single audience and exclude everybody else. So that's how I kind of think about Zabalazaa.
And what was the first, like the big major project that was like, this is the affirmation, I know what I'm doing is working and I've got such a great product or brand or thing going here on?
There's so many different angles I can see that from, because I remember I was in Cape Town. I think I came at end 2009, beginning 2010, and I worked my first retail job because I didn't know anybody here. I was like brand spanking new, and after my 2 years of retail, I was like, actually, I'm good at this, but this is not me. And then I did a lot of customized sneakers, and then Adidas, through a connection and seeing this and that. They ended up, and me approaching them as well after quitting, they ended up seeing that I can do something that's significant. I gave them a business plan of customizing sneakers, and they liked it, and they took me to a couple of places around South Africa, like Joburg, when they launched, not launched, but Area 3, they had something there, and a store that was opening, and the Street Cred Festival, and this and that. So that was one level, but I still felt that it wasn't an affirmation because I knew Adidas working inside retail. So a year after that, I went and I entered designing Dava. And I don't do things like that, like entering competitions or entering whatever, you know, in terms of you have to fill in a form.
Was that the roadblock for you, the speed bump?
Yeah, it's like, dude, I know what I'm doing, you know.
Sure.
And I know it's like you have to do it officially, where you have to say, I'm this person, this is what I do.
Yes.
So I did that, and they sent me an email back and said, we'd like to come and see your work here, designing Dava. So they gave you that, what is it called? We're emerging creators, basically. They don't have to pay anything except for the whistles and bells that are put around your stand. So with that, I found a way to collaborate with a lot of people, and immediately L Deco, was it L Fashion or L Deco? I think then I had an interview there. I'd never been interviewed by a magazine, not something that big in terms of a South African, you know what I mean? And it went really well. And funniest thing, 7 years later, that picture that they took there was in a high school book.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's weird things like that are connected, that keep on affirming these things. But I think the first biggest was the designing Dava L Deco combination.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, actually going back to the picture in the school book, my wife's teacher, an art teacher, and she actually brought it up to me, and I said, amazing, full circle, it is. And I mean, was there kind of, not a regret, but were you just thinking to yourself, if I just entered one of these competitions or one of these projects sooner, I would have been on track a lot quicker? Or do you think the timing was all right?
The timing was all right, and I didn't have regrets, because I didn't know that. Remember, I came from Bloemfontein, and we don't have these type of things there at all. And even before that, I was in Manchester, where I wasn't seeing myself as an artist. I lived there for 2 years, and I was just like me being me, you know. And even though I did start art not formally, but like really starting to go, hey man, let me do this. Let me go to a night out where they do art or whatever it is, you know.
Yes.
Join a graffiti crew or whatever it is. But only after that, I started going, hey, this thing is serious. I can do something with it. And then I actually got into going and saying to myself, let me enter something. Not enter something, but it came. Somebody said to me, I think it's Lee Cupido. he said, hey,
Yeah.
man, yeah, you know Lee.
Yes.
Yeah, I think he was one of the first guys that I met in Cape Town who was like really like forthcoming and like chilled out. I met him at a graffiti thing actually.
Okay.
Yo man, check this out. And I don't know if he entered or not, but I don't think he entered, but I saw that and I filled it in, and the next thing it came back and they're like, we really like your work. And they even interviewed me there, because usually they only have like 2 or 3 people which they really like their work. And I remember they interviewed myself and Greer, what's her name? A lady called Greer and the husband at the time. And I was like, okay, you know what? If this is the way things are going, let me really try. And then from then on, I just like full speed ahead. Man.
Yeah, well, I guess Atang really trying. It just, is like Superman punching holes through walls. No, fascinating. And I mean, I know you're saying your father being an artist and your mother an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Was there ever, from them, was there a resistance from you kind of entering that career, or?
Not even a shadow of a doubt, man. I mean, my mom actually enrolled me into like a graphic design when I finished my matric. I wasn't even thinking art at the time.
No.
I was just like me being me, just like the next thing is like these things are there. And yeah, I'm like, oh, artwork. But I was like, artwork on computers. And only after 3 years, I was like, okay, I'm not about this life. But from my dad as well, I mean, even though they weren't together for the longest of time, he was full-on artist. He still is an artist.
Yes.
So there could have been no resistance. He did ask me once, out of all the things I could have done, why did I go and do art? Because in his times, art was like incredibly hard to do in terms of get it out there.
For sure.
And if you're on a bit of a political side as well, it was even worse, because then, all sorts of melodies come into play, being chased by cops because of your views, and you're putting it public where people can actually read it in their thousands.
Yes.
Troublemaker. So he just saw that lane, and even though apartheid was finished, the financial part for him wasn't that good, you know what I mean? Yeah, so those type of things made him think.
Sure, but I mean, even today, it's not an easy career.
True.
And even the idea of the full-time artist or the full-time artist is kind of a new concept. I think, like growing up, all the artists or creatives I knew, had another career or job subsidizing that kind of passion or the art.
It's like the art is a side chick or something.
Yeah, pretty much, totally. And I mean, just going back to, I mean, for your father, was there a lot of, let me just rephrase this, we can edit this out. Being an artist back then, having something like apartheid to make commentary on, do you think that for an artist it was sometimes easier in terms of having an enemy and making a body of work towards that?
Say it again?
Well, like for an artist, say back then when you had something like apartheid, knowing that your work can be used to kind of attack those ideas, and it has a strong base and value and meaning or purpose, and you think post that it's sometimes maybe hard to find things to latch on, like ideas or things to talk about?
It depends on the type of person that you are and how you define what your purpose is, because I believe in the way that I've seen things, that there's always something that's there. You just need to be on the right page in terms of where you're reading. And with him, his autobiography ended up playing that part where a friend suggested it as well and said, hey, listen, you know what, you've really had this type of life and people don't know about it. And you, unbeknownst to you, a lot of people do know your work in this form, which is the cartoons that he used to put out there. So then he started realizing that actually, that's like the best material, if I can put it in that way, to be able to say this is what's happened here. And because nobody else has done it, and from where he comes from, the things that happened to him, and he wasn't just like the cartoonist, right? He did poetry as well, which was also like resistant poetry. And even the magazines that he worked in at a time where if I know much about magazines, the two kind of well-known Pan-African anti-apartheid magazines of that time, and a lot of people that do know art from way back, they know especially Staff Writer, you know. And the second one was called Learn and Teach. And between those two, we had works in there. And a lot of well-known artists like Dumile Feni as well. His work was there, you know, and so on and so on. So, I mean, it's people like that he was in the same circles with, except he didn't really push himself that much, I believe. He was trying to, like, figure out things in life at the same time.
Sure.
Yeah.
Which is, tough gig.
Yeah, you know.
And, I always just feel, I think the more successful artists are the ones that kind of share their inside world with the outside world. And I think you've kind of navigated... I think you've just, navigated your life in a very creative and clever way. And then I think what you share is your kind of story. And either it be through design and something you might feel as not as personal. I think there's just I'm not saying like that, or more accessible to a wider audience. I think that kind of flair that it has is from your kind of experience or your interaction with the world. And I would just say, so just going back to chatting about you working with different brands like Adidas, Mr. Price Home, I mean, was there a point of not fake it till you make it, but how did you know how to navigate, such projects, and when did you feel like it's become second nature, or like I understand the formula?
It was a process that I had to crush through, literally, because when I decided to quit my 9-to-5, I had nothing to fall back on. Nada. And I'm new in Cape Town.
Yes.
And nobody knows me in the art scene. So for me, it was thinking, I said this to myself, I have to think 10 times better, work 10 times harder, and be 10 times more oblivious to anything that is something that is going to impede my way. Like if I'd met somebody that I didn't like personally in whatever form, and he offered me something that was creative in terms of commission or whatever it is, I was his best friend, man. Like I'd straight up go and do those things. And it wasn't about faking it, but it was like really trying to explore my mind and go how deep, how far. And the survival thing, I think, was the number one pusher for me. Yeah, you have to make rent. You have to have food. You have to send money home. Whatever it was, there was always that thing that's at the back of your neck. Like, you know what I mean? So I am a creative person, but I also, I'm a journalist by nature. So I know a lot of information from a lot of different things because I grew up with a mother that was a business person. So all sorts of people came to her for different things, and she changed careers like 3 times. So between when she was, she had a hair salon at some point, she used to sell clothes at some point, and then she also had a store, which was a cosmetic store. She had a factory at some point producing stuff. So between the people that she met, your mind opens up and you start realizing that your client can be anyone. You just need to know how to put something out there to them. And from that, then you start like immersing yourself in everything, man. Like when I came here, I realized in Cape Town there's a lot of cliques, and like everybody knows that. But I don't come from that background, you know what I mean? So I know guys that are into the cycling scene, like Nils from Cycleworks. I know like gallery owners. I know guys that are big into fashion, like Malcolm Klook and those guys, you know. So I don't try and like get stuck in some corner, because when you're there, you don't have any other place to turn, and your mind has to work in the opposite direction. It's called divergent thinking, basically.
All right.
Yeah. So I have divergent thinking, and I have, what's the opposite of it? When you can take 1,000 ideas, turn them into one thing, or take one thing into 1,000 ideas. That's how my mind works.
And you think that's kind of a skill learned, or do you think it was kind of... I sometimes I don't like using the word talent, because it just seems like you sat back and did nothing and it all just happened.
You hone it.
Sure.
You hone it. I definitely hone it, because my 2 favorite words are new and different. If something new and something is different, it immediately attracts me, because I want to know what is it about that thing that makes it like that. Why does You know, like even when I worked at Adidas, for example, I wasn't just the guy selling the shoes. I'd know the history of the shoes, and I'd know something about it that if a client came into the store, I'd say, hey man, I think you might like this, and I'd give them a bit of information about it. And I used to collect books. Like I think I ended up even teaching some of the guys at work because I had all these magazines that I collected and so on. So even with art, I'm like that. I've got like different books, I've got maquettes, and I love nature. So your mind just scatters everywhere. You don't know like a whole lot of specifics that are that hardcore.
Sure.
You know a lot of different things. So you just choose which specifics you want, and then you know that today, and then you leave it alone the next day. So your mind just keeps on expanding.
Sure. I mean, I definitely think for you, confidence is like one of your biggest assets in terms of you just seem to be. You just seem like, and I think that kind of like that knowledge and that familiarity just makes you walk into a room and just feel like I'm comfortable. They can throw something at me and, you know, bring it. I'm ready.
Yeah.
I kind of almost see yourself transformed into, say, a brand. Would you see yourself as such, like Atang the brand? And I have a sense that maybe in the beginning it was companies telling you what they want, but I think more so now I have the feeling that it's you telling what they want, because they don't know what they want.
Bravo.
And I think in terms of Atang the brand, they see this very cool, trendy guy who's just on top of it, and then that association with you is just kind of a guarantee. Is that how you feel your business, where your brand is now, or how you kind of operate with companies? Or
Yeah, but I think there's always a few more steps on the ladder to climb at the same time, you know, because I do feel that I'm in control now. I've worked really hard for it.
Sure.
I've literally starved and extremes to get to this point. So it gets to a point where you've now, there's a saying where they say you don't even put your hand on the paper to draw, you just let the pen do its own thing.
Sure.
And I think even with my branding, I can easily increase that, you know, and not in a bragging way, but I know who I am, and that's like, I think, what I need to say more clearly, because when you know who you are, you know what you can do, what your limits are, and what you can do with what you have. Like, I mean, like I said, this year I've really kept quiet on most sorts of media, but I still have interviews that are literally out there. There's something that came from El Deco India, I think it's out now.
Okay, interesting.
And I haven't mentioned it on any sort of social media. And there's also books that have been out this year, like coffee table books. And it's okay, man. I know there will be a time when it all needs to get out, but for now it's just like I'm taking a sabbatical in a way.
All right, for sure. I know it's important to kind of withdraw sometimes and have that personal reflection. Is there also a sense, I know for me, my sometimes struggle with Instagram is overexposure, and then there's a certain, people kind of get too familiar, or the not expectations, they become too familiar, and it can almost become repetitive. And in a good way, what that has made me do is kind of start trying other things to, you know, other creative mediums or processes, just to kind of feed into that feeling that now I've got an audience. I kind of also want to not entertain them, but just keep my stuff fresh to kind of keep them there. Do you sometimes have that? I mean, well, you do so many different things. I don't think you'll ever get a bored audience.
Are you saying that, do I feel like I need to post something, or I don't know?
Well, just feeling that you're posting so much that people almost become bored of it, or...
Oh, yeah, I've got people that I know that do that, and you end up not looking, but they have once in a while like that really incredible picture of their child or whatever it is. And for me, because I've learned from media, from seeing things happen to people. I know like a couple of people that have said, you know, like there's a word that I said earlier on, which I think now I'm regretting it a little bit, because it's a common word, but when you think about it again, you sound like I feel like I sound like I'm sexist, you know.
Right.
So I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have said that. And with those small things coming out, what happened to me once was I came back from Miami, right? And I'd taken pictures there, but like really like, hey, I'm enjoying myself. And more than enjoying myself, I was like, I got my artwork in Miami. And if you're in a good space where people are seeing you happy and then you put out your artwork there, it's more likelihood that they're going to try and follow up and like, wow, man, I want to have this energy around this artwork and this artist.
Yes.
And they essentially buy you as well, right?
Yes.
So with that, I also said to myself, you know what? Sorry, let me finish that story off. I came back and somebody said, oh, we saw you there, and they knew so many details, man. And I was like, yo, that's a bit freaky. And it was more than one person, you know what I mean? And then I also realized another thing, that I, in a way, am taking people's expectations of who I am and putting them up there. And then with that, I know, for example, art is hard, right? And then there's also people like most black people that I know that don't even know what art is, because their families didn't have that luxury of being able to say you can go in their creative route to make your life. And immediately I do these things which a lot of people consider amazing, and then they see me selling it in Miami. So if you even get some picture straight after that where somebody tags you and you're at a party or whatever it is, half drunk or whatever situation you're in, it turns all that really good stuff into like, oh geez, look at that guy now, you know what I mean?
Sure.
So those things have made me go and think a bit more carefully. And even now, like doing this podcast with you, I was in a happy space and I was like, you know what, I've had the sabbatical for most of the year and it's going towards December, and I know before even January hits, I need to start getting myself back into like a little bit by little bit, you know what I mean, of communication with people and have that thing for people, you know what I mean. So I'm trying to just at least make sure that I'm there even if I'm not there.
No, for sure. I mean, I think cancel culture is a big thing at the moment, and I don't know if it's just like...
What culture?
Cancel culture.
What's that?
That's the term, basically, where because we're posting so much online, and there's a sense when someone makes a mistake and it's about pointing them out and bringing them down.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
No, it's a big thing. Yeah.
That's what I'm scared of, man.
No, for sure. And I think,
not scared of, I'm just like, you know what, I don't want to put myself into that thing.
Well, I think the kind of the mindset is the bigger they are, the harder they fall. So I think as you climb up the ladder, you just become this juicy target.
You know what I mean, man.
But I think also, going back to the whole idea of you becoming a brand, I think, that's becomes quite a hard thing to navigate because you are so a part of your work, and whatever you do reflects in the work and in the design. And if Atang does this means this work is that. Yeah, so I mean, I think that is a big thing with social media, and I think it's a big thing with artists becoming brands. Like if I also think of, say, like Lady Scully, she's like also just on top of it, and a huge social media presence, and her work and her are so interlinked. They are the same thing.
You know what I mean?
And so I think, but then with that comes the territory or the danger of, that if you make a mistake, then the work also loses its value. Yeah. And I think, so I mean, I can understand maybe, as you say, pulling back a bit is important. And
trying to, what I'm also really trying to do is I'm trying to show people my work. I even though I am part of my work, but I want people to focus on that, because I do have my private life. There's things I love to do, I want to be, and I've had incidents where people in the club did things, where I was in a restaurant, people, you know what I mean, and it happened 2 or 3 times, and I was just like, wait a minute, I don't want this. And I've got family, I've got, you know what I mean. I had an interview once with a magazine that I didn't want to. I'd said no twice to them. They stalked me, and then finally they went to the gallery, and then the gallery were just like, please just do this thing. And I did it, and they mentioned my family. I was like, what? Why? I didn't even go there. And it's a big magazine. And then I went to the editors and couldn't get them to the writer. The writer blames this person. So you end up going, what?
Sure.
There's even like an online magazine. I asked them for I think maybe a year or 2 years to take care of specific content because I wasn't doing sneakers anymore. I used to do like customized sneakers for a while, right? And it became really popular, but I felt that it's not art that talks to people the way I wanted to talk. You know what I mean? And I stopped doing customizing sneakers, and I started asking everybody like, "Hey, please take off, don't tag, da. These guys they have, I don't know, whatever it's called, you know, the back end of the internet.
Sure.
I'm trying to find the word, but I sound ridiculous.
The dark web? No,
I mean
Just
the hashtag, this, that coding.
Yeah, right,
they really have it down to a point where it attracts people. As soon as you put in the word customized sneakers, Atang would be there. And when people were asking me over like, I don't know, for like 3 years, bro, I'd like, where did you get this from? They'd mention that, and I was like, hey guys, please take it off, and they didn't respond. But now it's finally died off. So I mean, if something that I liked took that long to die off, now imagine if something bad happens.
Right, sure. When something goes on the internet, it's there forever.
Yeah, man, bruh. How do you have to pay people, or you know what I mean?
Well, I think like there's the Barbra Streisand effect. The more you try and cancel it, or like
the more it becomes
people,
popular.
the bigger it gets, you know. So sometimes the best thing is just to not pursue it, and just let, you know, hopefully next week someone else makes a fuck up. And then they take the spotlight.
So that's why I try and focus on my artwork, because that's the only public part that I want for myself now. You know what I mean? I just want people to see themselves in the art, not to like look at me and go, this is what's making. I mean, I am making the art, but like they should like when you listen to a song and then you picture yourself, oh my god, yeah, that happened to me last week. I want people to feel their own version of that in my artwork.
No, totally. So you're finding, I think from the break, are you kind of trying to finding that balance between kind of sharing and keeping stuff to yourself? And
I think I have, if I can put it that way. If you look at my, like almost all my posts, I don't know, I want to check my thing. If you check, but like I think a lot of my posts have stopped being about me, or I've done a marathon for the first time. Or,
I saw that, that's fascinating.
You know what I mean? Yeah, and it's just like, okay, there's one thing that I celebrated, but then besides that, it's just like straight up work, man. And that's what I like. Or like maybe one of me working, but if it's not anything to with what I'm using this device for or this app for, then I don't think anybody needs to really know it that much.
Sure.
Which is also good to be an enigma, you know what I mean? Just be...
Yeah, I think like invisibility is like the last superpower anyone wants to choose now, but I think more and more so people are going to appreciate that, you know, being anonymous.
Yeah.
And I see also recently you exhibited at Zabalazaa Designs.
Oh, yeah.
That's, I mean, talk about accolades, having such a big institute, say, come on board, or what was the process to
get there? I mean, funny enough, a lot of people asked me, like, I think 2 years previous to that, why am I not in there? And I also didn't know, but I thought just, you know, I do design, or my work is seen as design more, so they're still in a different type of art world. But when they did, the guy at the time, Azu, he came to a Southern Guild show, and I had a work there, Maudwana Finyela, which I think is one of my most popular works. And Maudwana is like a nice little creature. My wife sort of wrote the story about it with me, for me, and he saw that, he asked me about it, and then I showed him how it also kind of works, if I can say like that, because it also is a chair besides being a sculpture and a light. And he liked it. He immediately asked me for a meeting the next day, like 9 a.m. Well, we discussed, and I got like a 9 a.m. And then I talked a bit more about my work, and it was pinpoint exactly what the upcoming show was about. But not just that, but also like what they were trying to envision African artists also being, not just the old school or the present, but also the future, and not just what do you call it, like a typical exoticism of what Africa is, even though we're here, you know what I mean?
Sure.
There were so many different genres that my artworks were as a group, that it really fitted well with what they were asking for. And I, even though like, I mean, it would be nice to have something in a permanent museum, but for me, I'm still learning a lot, and I I want to have other works out there before I put it in a museum permanently. And I think it's nice to be able to see that as well. So
Sure.
I had illustrations which were on paper, and I had the illustrations were explaining some of the artworks in terms of like a visual language, and then I also had two sculptures. There were supposed to be 3, but I think they were nicer as 2. Did you see the artworks that were in there?
No, I never got a chance to see it, unfortunately. Yeah, well, I can see them online, but that's a fuck up on my part. But sometimes I'm bad on that.
Yeah.
You know, I ingest art all day, so sometimes I get art fatigue. But I mean, it's totally great. Institution to be in and take part in, and
and also the reference of the works that they were talking about. Sorry not to cut.
No, sure.
I think for me, I was happy that they did that, because the way I do my artwork, even if it is seen as design or it performs as design, if I can say it that way, it has a lot of reference to who I am, and not just as a person, but my clan, my South Africanness, my Africanness, and my global consciousness as well, because I see art as a means of communication in some form or the other, as we all do, or those ones that choose to. But I try and find things that are just bordering on that we need this as information for ourselves.
Sure.
We need this as information to know who we are. And when I know about who I am, then it's such a freeing thing to be able to put it as an artwork, and then also look at the various angles that it fills in. And by that I mean the Mautwana Finyala that was at Southern Guild that he saw, besides being, like I said, a chair and a light and a sculpture, it has an actual story that's written about it. The features on the artwork are representative of the climate where the animal lives at that time. And even with that, it ties in with Basotho culture, Basotho Botswana culture, which is Bafokeng, which are the first, or not the first, I don't know if it's the first or the main, but the first clan that was formed by Moshwesh. And I want to get that information 100%. My wife is doing research.
Okay, yeah. We can edit and post.
Yeah, edit that part. But it's that type of thing that I put into the artwork. So when institutions like that see it, then I'm really happy, because then I can actually be able to talk more about it on my Instagram and say this is what the artwork is about, even though it's not all written at the show itself. You know what I mean? And that's what I like to give out information about. This is what's happening, because I'm not big into like reading news and
So you find like a big part that the research and the investigating, you think that plays a bigger role in the final product?
No, they play
or do you think it's a good balance?
Yeah, they have to, because unbeknownst to most people, I experiment a lot with materials, and it costs like quite a lot in terms of like my studio practice. And I also research as well, research by talking to people. But luckily for me, my wife does. She was working for the Human Science Research Council. Like, that's when I met her, like way back. But anyway, with that, she really helps a lot in terms of researching what the material is, what am I doing, and so on and so on. And then I go out and I look at the physical, like when we went to, we've been to Tababusiu in Lesotho, where they have different types of homes, or basically it's like a village of a cultural village, should I say, that shows the different types of homes that Basotho people had between the 1800s and I think late 1900s, or currently anyway. And then they have all the animal totems and that, so you start understanding how the things were made. So the piece that was in Zaitsmoko was called Lechai, and it was based on that information that I got there. You know what I mean? The materials that I used and the way the thing was made, but I made it contemporary, and it explains so many things. And when you look at it on the Instagram, it actually shows you how it's anamorphic, how it's biomorphic, and it gets into more scientific. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So it's something that can literally go into a museum and be understood as a museum quality work.
Sure.
And that's what I want to put out all the time.
No, I mean, that series is amazing. I think, how you've put it together. And I mean, again, as you say, all the work behind it kind of gives it its quality and its strength.
Yeah.
And it's so nice that you and your wife are like this power couple. It's always nice to have those connections. I understand that also with my wife, her also being in the arts.
Yeah.
You know, it's great to have that type of partnership and friendship. I think we're going to have to wrap it up on time.
Okay. 100%.
Is there anything? It is pre-recorded, so it will be launched around early January. Is there any shows or events that you would like to talk about? And please plug a website, but you could just Google Atang and your internet will crash with all the cool stuff that will pop up.
No. Well, in February, I will be doing a group show at the Cape Town Art Fair with a gallery called THK. But I'm putting illustrations out there. I'm trying to like have different things with different galleries. Some of them are really itching for me to give them sculptures, but it's not a good thing to have the same artworks everywhere. You know what I mean? So I'm doing illustrations with them, and after that, there's also three artworks that I created for a private client. Beautiful, and I made them this year. They took quite a long time. Besides that, I'm trying to think what really is going on. At the moment, because I've taken a sabbatical, I haven't thought of art and what's going on. But I know as soon as I put an artwork out there, it's going to some place and it's just going to like one after another. If I can say it this way, right? I'm planning a lot of things in South Africa, in Europe, and in America. But they're going to try and stretch out throughout the year because I'm creating lots of different works. So all people need to do is just check out my Instagram, I think. And I think even my Google page. No, I don't do that as much. But my Instagram, if you just go at Atang Tshikare, you'll be able to see quite a lot of things that I'll be creating. Yeah. But look out for the end of January, definitely. Okay. There's artworks that I'm putting out, 3 beautiful ones. There's 2 of them look like trees. I made them with wood, bronze, and stone. First time I worked with stone. And the other one is the second one is also, the third one is also almost like a totem, but it's a mountain actually with a little creature on top. Okay. And it's made with bronze, wood, and stone. It's incredible.
Well, if you say so.
I love it.
Great. Well, I definitely hope to have you on again, and hopefully the show grows, and when we have live recordings with film feed maybe.
Okay.
We can do that. But yeah, again, I really appreciate you taking the time to be on the show. Fantastic chatting to you, and I wish you all the best.
No, man.
And thank you, Blended Audio, for making this possible. Catch me next week for episode 20. Cheers. Bye. ArtPod is a South African-focused visual arts podcast hosted by Claude Chandler and produced by the generous assistance of Blended Podcasts, brought to you by Blended Audio.